Uganda's human rights environment remains restrictive, with the government clamping down on free expression, peaceful assembly, and dissent. And with aid pullouts, there are devastating impacts.
Mistreatment, some people severely beaten, and even lives lost.
Civil society is incapacitated.
Means that they have to scale down on community outreach. It means that they have to scale down on the messaging.
And this is threatening the human rights space.
So there are people who have been emboldened. They know they can violate rights and get away with it.
As Uganda goes into the general election, there is a detrimental effect.
There are people in jail for 5 years without a trial.
Life and human rights have been disrupted.
Those that enjoy impunity must be celebrating.
They just enjoy the lucrative nature when they are funded.
This is Agatha Atuhaire, a team lead of Agora. Agora is an organization that has built online conversations to catalyze positive change, engaging citizens to promote democratic values and demand for social justice. This they have done with programs like online exhibitions on corruption, cartooning for human rights, and the Agora discourse. They have done this with resilience against the intimidation from the state.
And that I've seen that's something they don't like much. So that's why they come after people like us. Even if they say our work is not bringing any impact there, people are not imprisoned. But they know that Ugandans and who are really unforgiving of you and your luxurious lifestyle, while for them they are struggling to find painkillers. Yeah, and that's also really very important. It's the only avenue we are left with, and it's the only way that we were having hope of holding these people accountable, for them to know that there are people that will put this information out there and Ugandans will be watching.
But with the donor cuts, they have slowed down most of the works at the Agora facility.
The team is still working, knowing that there might not be a salary tomorrow. We managed to mash up some of the resources we have to say, let's prepare for the worst days that are coming. So yeah, but that's how it has affected us. It has made us worried. It makes you as a team leader not able to hold people accountable, not people to demand that they are at work. And that's the other problem, that before we got our first ever funding, no one worked full-time at Agora. Maybe apart from me, others had to look for something else to do. So when you're paying their salary, you demand that even if you want to do something more, let's first do Agora's work. When you're not paying them, you are even thankful that they are still here. So they have to go and first do what brings food on the table, and that affects how much work we are able to do. And there's a lot of work that Agora is pressured to do, because we are being asked by people who have needs, individuals, institutions.
Many civil society organizations, just like Agora, are in the same pool of uncertainty. Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana, the executive director and founder of the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, a civil society organization that is mandated to promoting respect for human rights, democracy, and the rule of law.
On average, we get over 1,000 complaints a year of different nature. There are those who have land disputes. There are those who have been dismissed unfairly from work. There are those who come here having family complaints. There are those who need assistance in matters of succession. There are matters concerning for example, political activities going on. There are those who report instances of torture, disappearances, abduction of relatives. So we are always intervening.
This has been his daily job for the last 30 years. Not until early this year, when US President Donald Trump's decision to pull out foreign aid from countries like Uganda in the sub-Saharan Africa created panic and disruptions in several countries and organizations.
The ability or the capacity to deliver actually has largely been affected. There are many organizations, for example, that have had to close shop. There are organizations that remain shadows of themselves. There are organizations which are limping because sometimes the demand overwhelms you and you can only offer little. So donor assistance is always a very important component of civil society survival. And with this withdrawal and donor cuts, this particular sector, call it the civil society sector, has largely been affected.
Reading from the same script, a stone's throw away is Chapter 4, a civil liberties organization providing robust and strategic legal responses to the abuse of civil liberties in defense of human rights. Their woes are not any different.
Because of that situation, the level of funding that's available to civil society today is really, really small. And I must add that USAID, just like the Democratic Governance Facility, we're also supporting government agencies and departments. And they're also going to be directly impacted. Many of them have had to scale back on some of the activities that they had set out to do this year. So the impact is actually not even only on civil society, it's also affecting government agencies and ministries and departments. And the concern that we have is that at the bottom of it all, there's an ordinary Ugandan who was hoping to benefit from these services that these organizations were set out to do and now are unable to do.
According to the Human Rights Watch World Report 2025, Uganda's human rights environment remains restrictive, with the government clamping down on freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and dissent, something that has significantly obstructed the ability for civil society organizations to investigate and report human rights violations in the country.
NGOs create avenues for broader civic participation in governance. So when government weaponizes NGOs, they take away this space for citizens, where citizens should freely express their wishes and demands, but also hold their leaders accountable. So this is the space that government has taken away, directly or indirectly, but also now that we see largely absence of accountability, absence of avenues to hold the leaders accountable, I'm sure those that enjoy impunity must be celebrating.
There is always that fear by the state that these civic organizations are actually doing better than what the state is doing. And it is that fear and that suspicion that actually causes that confrontation.
Civil society organizations play a crucial role in strengthening democracy and promoting development, fostering citizens' participation, advocating for human rights, and holding governments accountable, and as such, serve as a bridge between the citizens and the state.
We see the judiciary bent under political pressure, its independence compromised. We see a parliament co-opted, reduced to a rubber stamp.
The confrontation between government and civil society organizations is much amplified by the government spokesperson who thinks otherwise about the role of non-profit organizations and civic spaces in Uganda.
Governments are supposed to be checked by members of parliament. Those civil society organizations help us because they provide employment for the people of Uganda. But to say they are checking on government, how? They don't sit in parliament, they don't determine how much is spent, They just enjoy the lucrative nature when they are funded. But the people who must check on government, because the law allows them to do so, and they have the mandate of the people, are the members of parliament. Let them do their work the way they are supposed to do.
That displays a high level of ignorance of what civic organizations do. Because if they only knew, they would definitely appreciate the role that we play. We have, as civic organization, played a role in legislative processes. For example, when laws are being made, we are consulted and we do research. We provide research for Parliament. A lot of legislation benefits from the work and the research done by civic organizations. I've already told you there are very many institutions that are providing assistance in terms of legal support, and as such ensuring effective access to justice for those who ordinarily would not have or would not get it. So actually, for anyone who assume that civic organizations only exist for purposes of just getting money, I think that is a real and serious misunderstanding of what these groups do. And hence, sometimes we don't wonder the behavior that is displayed as a result of that ignorance.
This comes at a time when Uganda is gearing up towards its 2026 general election. And now with the donor cuts, most players anticipate a lot of gaps and high levels of human rights violations.
We see no serious voter education going on in the country. Also, we have had the second challenge of accreditation through Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission has selectively accredited NGOs, and they are extremely biased this time around. They even have no explanation to the NGOs that they have not accredited, like CCG. Yeah, so many governance NGOs at the national level have not been accredited by the Electoral Commission. So you find that the most organizations they've accredited usually have no funding, or they are very new, and that explains the reason why there is no work going on.
Civil society organizations and community groups work together on projects by forming partnerships, building coalitions, and creating networks to share knowledge and resources. But donor cuts have disrupted these collaborations by causing operational closures, staff layouts, which reduces the capacity for collective action, and networking, which has weakened independent advocacy and promotes competition over collaboration for the scarce resources.
So what does that mean? It means that they have to scale down on community outreach. It means that they have to scale down on the messaging. It means that they cannot even mobilize. They cannot even message to rally people to show up on the ballot, to rally people to make those critical decisions, voting issues, campaigns on how do you vote, activities like candidates trainings, activities like peace-related campaigns. All these activities cannot happen because the US government pulling out their monies means that they cannot do much. And the risk is you are going to have voter apathy. You're going to have people not showing up. You're going to have, because if they are not mobilized, they won't show up. Even when they show up, they're not going to make decisive decisions because they're not civically prepared.
Reading from history, Ugandan elections are characterized by abuses like killing by security forces, arrest and beating of opposition supporters and journalists, disruptions of opposition rallies, and a shutdown of the internet. Early this year, Uganda had a by-election that clearly set a tone of violence against journalists, intimidation, arrests, and physical attacks.
Depending on which template the security forces and the government choose to use, we may see a very sharp escalation in human rights violations, especially in a context where we have not had accountability for past violations during the previous elections. So there are people who have been emboldened. They know they can violate rights and get away with it. And so there's really no motivation for them to exercise the restraint that may be necessary. So I think it will largely depend on which template the government chooses to use. But whatever it is, we are going to do everything we can to prepare, to document those violations, and to take legal action against the perpetrators. We will, of course, be relying a lot on citizen journalists and, of course, also the traditional media to be able to capture as much as they can. But when we have this sort of information, we all need to stand together to demand for accountability. Because in the end, it's only through accountability, transparency and accountability, that you can be able to advance a profession of force or raise the cost of human rights violations.
Going by what we have seen in the NRM primaries, it is very disturbing, because we saw a lot of abuse taking place. We saw cases of vote buying. We saw cases of mistreatment, some people severely beaten, and even lives lost. Now, if you go by what we saw, we definitely have fears for the general election. If that can happen in a primary election of a party, what about at a national level, where the same people are contesting against their political rivalries? So definitely there is fear. The other fear is that we are going into an election without civic education. People are not being mobilized. People may not understand the necessity to go and vote, and most of them may want to shy away from the election. Sometimes they need to be mobilized so that they can go and vote their leaders. But here is a situation where you are likely to experience a very low voter turnout, and that is very, very challenging. On the other hand, we also need voices that can call the perpetrators to order. And if those voices are not allowed, they might continue to engage in acts of abuse as if it's business as usual. And of course, that means we see political violence, we see conflict, and of course, a lot of vote rigging, and ultimately, the will of the people may not be reflected in the outcome of the election.
The National Unity Platform is one of the most popular opposition political parties in Uganda, and its supporters have faced several human rights violations, including forced disappearances, arrests, and killings. In November 2020, at least 54 people were killed in just 2 days in response to widespread protests over the arrest of Robert Kyagulanyi during the campaign trail. And now, as Uganda gears for the forthcoming elections, the political players in the opposition are worried, more so with the dwindling political space and shrinking civic space.
The violation of human rights are going to go on unabated. The organizations that have previously tried to challenge these violations in courts to offer representation to victims of human rights violations are now incapable of moving because they have no budgets. In other countries, civil society organizations raise money from the population. But in our country, in our space, most citizens are struggling to put food on the table. So they may not even have the balance to finance and fund these civil society organizations.
The foreign aid has significantly affected the lifeline of many civil society organizations, having a trickle-down effect to the local masses in Uganda.
With these donor cuts, they care because I have no capacity to engage lawyers to represent them effectively. I have no capacity to help them understand the legal process. I have no capacity to intervene administratively to help to ensure that the leaders or the local leaders actually intervene. I may not even have capacity to provide the assistance the prisoner needs in terms of ensuring that there's legal representation. So every Ugandan really should care when these donor cuts are affecting these organizations.
So you find that even when you have funds or running some programs, there is no ecosystem to contribute to, because there is no single NGO in Uganda that can do governance work alone and make impact. We usually make collective impact. So that collectiveness no longer exists. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 organizations doing scattered things, and they cannot make a remarkable impact like before. So this is what is happening to governance work for NGOs in Uganda.
All African countries except Eritrea received aid from the United States in 2023. Ethiopia was the largest recipient of aid funds, receiving more than $1.7 billion. Other large recipients of economic development support from USAID were Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Kenya, South Sudan, Uganda, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, Zambia, and Malawi, each receiving more than $400,000 in 2023. But all is not lost. The European Union announced a boost in humanitarian aid for the Greater Horn of Africa, West and Central Africa. In West and Central Africa, 150 million euros will support the humanitarian response in the countries directly affected by the ongoing insecurity and conflict, including West Africa's coastal countries already impacted by the spillover effect from the crisis in Central Sahel. Funding will be used for food and livelihood assistance, nutrition, healthcare, water, sanitation, and hygiene, amongst others. This will bring the total EU humanitarian response in Africa to an estimated 750 million euro in 2025.
This was critical funding. It was not just funding that was going to democratic development. We saw a huge cut when it comes to health sector budgets. Health sector budgets. Over 6,000 Ugandans, either working directly for USAID or indirectly through the contractors or indirectly working through the NGOs. They lost jobs.
African governments and institutions must also recalibrate, strengthen domestic revenue collection, simplifying and harmonizing tax regimes, and deepening ties with new emerging donors.
The discussion that seems to be prevailing right now is the necessity for us to look inwards for solutions. Even civic organizations have to look inwards for solutions. For example, we needed to boost local philanthropy. You see, even in Europe and America, where this aid comes from, it is also boosted by local philanthropy. So we also needed to engage our business community to understand the importance of these services that are offered by groups like ours, and hence the need for local philanthropy. We need also to appreciate the role of corporate social responsibility as a way of boosting these services. We need to invest in new funding methodologies like what they call crowdfunding.
Otherwise, as many slide into the spiral of silence due to lack of resources, there is a fear that human rights violations could go unchecked and unreported.
There haven't been so much of African solutions to Africa's problems, but I think it's a culture that we can start to instill in ourselves. It begins with trust. It begins with building that level of trust between yourself and the people. And I'm sure they can give what they have.
Solomon Serwanja, AIIJ, Unveils.